You remember fighting fantasy books, don't you? Of course you do. Oh yes, the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, Citadel of Chaos, the Forest of Doom, Deathtrap Dungeon, and many more besides. Now, you may be surprised to learn, potentially, that fighting fantasy books are still very much alive and well. And as if to prove it, there was a London Fighting Fantasy convention a few weeks ago. Fighting Fantasy Fest 3, in fact. Now, I went along to this fest and I have a video report for you to enjoy. So, if you'd like to find out how Fighting Fantasy co-creator and author Ian Livingstone puts a game book together, discover what the artist Chris Achilleos would draw if given free rein, and also see what issue 1 of White Dwarf sold for at the event's auction, then please keep a-watching. Hello my feisty little hedgehog, I am Jason Arnold, the author of The Last Days of Jack Sparks, the forthcoming October novel Ghoster, and some Doctor Who stuff. If you haven't had the pleasure and the joy of this channel before, then you may want to know that this is basically a retro channel in which I quack on about 80s horror movies, VHS, 80s horror movies on VHS, retro video games, and things like fighting fantasy game books. So let me tell you, and more importantly show you, what Fighting Fantasy Fest 3 was all about. It's a real joy in 2019 to walk into a space in which fighting fantasy is being celebrated so much and so passionately by quite a few people across various panels and stalls. Here we see the table of Scholastic, which is Fighting Fantasy's current publisher. Now, I'll admit that I will always prefer the original covers of those older books, but there's no denying that these new designs do look nicely colourful, and they're pretty cool, and they will appeal to younger readers. Now here's Ian Livingstone, co-creator of Fighting Fantasy, talking about his new Fighting Fantasy book, Assassins of Alancia. That's one of the really cool things about Fighting Fantasy, the fact that Ian and his fellow co-creator, Steve Jackson, are still writing the books. Well, Ian is. Steve is halfway through his book that he's been writing for quite some time, but I'm sure it'll be worth it when it arrives. He is, after all, the creator of the Sorcery series, which I love unreservedly. Now here's Ian talking about how he creates a game book and puts it all together. Shh, listen.
Well, this is actually a nightmare process. I mean, I don't take the whole of the session talking about that now, but I start off with 400 numbers, 1 to 400. On a sheet, and I start off with a blank piece of paper which becomes a map, a flowchart. So I start off with number 1, circle it, branches out into 2 choices, cross off 2 numbers off this, obviously 117 and 326, put it on there, circle it, and just write an annotation what happens at those. Obviously it splits off, it becomes long and weird. You have to make sure you bring people back, because there are certain critical points which are called pinch points, where you want people to have definite information. Otherwise, unless you find that definite information, you will fail. So then it goes off sprint again, because you want people to fail, and then you have to go back to put items in an early position which you'll need later on. So for example, you might need a key for a door, and you just introduce the door, then you have to go back and find somewhere to put that key so that someone can find it. If they went this way, they won't find it. If they go that way, they will find it. And then you have to make sure there's no continuous loops. Then when you finally finish, hopefully with an overarching story, which is great, then you have to go back and make sure it is balanced in terms of difficulty. So it's not too hard, not too easy. And then you have to balance it in terms of economy. So there's not too few gold pieces, or not too many gold pieces, so it's too simple. And then you have to play test to make sure that if you manage to choose the optimal route, it's not too brutal. And then knowing that everyone cheats, try and put a few anti-cheat devices in there. So come up with a few over the time. So for example, if you say, have you got a key? You go, of course I've got a key. And at which turn to the number that's stamped on it. Not so easy. That is in a nutshell what it's like, and it is an absolute nightmare process. You're in there with a piece of flowchart paper about the size of this table.
How long does that take?
It used to take us about 2 months, over a year now. We're doing other things now. People say, do you use Twine, do you use software packages? No, still old school, handwritten flowcharts.
Next up was a panel about the first ever fighting fantasy book, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. Here it is being presented by Jonathan Green, who is not only the host of this event, but is a fine author in his own right.
Right, this is the big talk of the day that you've all been waiting for. I'm thrilled to say that we have not only Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, the creators of Fighting Fantasy and the authors of The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, we also have Geraldine Cook, who commissioned the book in the first place. And the twisted mind of Russ Nicholson that created a fantastic article.
During this panel, it was great to see some of the planning materials used by Ian and Steve, who wrote half of the book each.
Here's the maze.
This is the maze of Zagor, which if you've got cameras, you might.
It's much clearer now. Multiple UK covers. Those are the Puffin covers, these are the Arkham covers, and here's the Scholastic cover. Lots of little bits of merchandise, Steve's Warlock of Firetop Mountain game. Who knows what this is going to be 40th anniversary classic edition.
Besides those ludicrous mock-up covers, the panel also rightly celebrated the work of artist Russ Nicholson, who had a nice anecdote about something a friend had told him about the reaction to his illustrations at the time.
And they said that there is an illustration in a book for children, which is the worst, most disgusting, horrible picture ever printed. That's it.
We finally got from Tony Lacey a contract, and there it is, from the 4th day of January 1982, again, a book called The Magic Quest. Magic Quest was eventually going to turn on to be Warlock of Firetop Mountain, but there were a couple of other names that we used. One of them was the, oh goodness, there was one of them called the Sorcerer's. Anyway, it was
Sorcerer's memory loss.
Anyway, there was a sorcerer.
Today's list of delights was almost as long as this queue to the table where Steve and Ian were signing books. In a moment I'll bring you that chat with Chris Achilleos and you'll find out how much White Dwarf #1 went for in auction. But first, dice. Lots and lots of dice. Oh God, how I love dice. This stall is called All Rolled Up, and as well as dice, it also features dice cups. Check out this one, shaped like some kind of castle, and 3D printed into the bargain. But now we have to dash back into a panel, just in time to see Fighting Fantasy / Doctor Who Target Books artist Chris Achilleos in conversation.
He's been a long-time collaborator and contributor to the world of fighting fantasy. He's got undeniable influence on fantasy painting and book illustration worldwide. He's worked in publishing, he's worked in film, the computer game industry, and the world of fine art. His work's recognisable for detailed historical costume and weaponry, and of course for his famous Amazons, her glamorous female models, something of his trademark. So, can you please join me in welcoming this afternoon Chris Achilleos.
One of the session's most remarkable moments was when Chris talked about his work on the cover of a book called Titan, the Fighting Fantasy World. Turns out, in his head, this dragon is a shape-shifting wizard. I grabbed him afterwards to ask a little bit more about this.
Yeah, I thought it'd be obvious because he's got earrings on.
Someone might have had that book in their collection for like 30 odd years and they would never have guessed that.
No.
That's fantastic.
No, I like to put stories in the pictures.
Chris definitely says it like it is. One of the very funniest moments of the day came when an audience member asked him what he would have been drawing throughout his career had he had free rein.
I wouldn't be drawing at all. Do you know how long he's been an artist, you know? He's stuck in a room, you know, by himself with the radio on and music and nothing else, you know, day or night, you know. It's not really healthy at all. You know, I'd much rather be outdoors doing something else.
You saw my YouTube video in which I gave my favourite top 10 Target books and covers, and number one was The Three Doctors. It doesn't seem to be one of your favourites. What do you think of The Three Doctors?
It was just another cover, you know.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it's popular because people talk about it, and it's got the hands, the Jack Kirby hands and all this.
Yeah.
Big deal, you know. I put it there because I love Jack Kirby.
So you see those hands as being like a Jack Kirby thing, yeah?
Yeah, of course, they're not mine. But I adopted them, you know. It's a tribute to a great master. I met him once in San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, yeah?
It was wonderful.
What was that
He said he
conversation
knows my work, and I said, "Do you know my work?" He said, "Yes, of course, I have your books, and I love your work." And I was chuffed because he's a master of comic strip art.
Yeah.
You know, like Frazetta is a master of fantasy art. They're two masters.
And tell us about the website. There's a lot of stuff on there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's practically not all that I did, but a lot of what I did, and it's nicely laid out. Easy to look at various things like, you know, the original artwork, and then book covers of magazines or westerns, you know, different genres. And he has a shop where you can go in and order prints.
Almost time to find out how much White Dwarf #1 went for in auction. But first, here are just 3 quick chats with other creators at the event.
So we're here from Chameleon Comics, and our project is a City of Thieves graphic novel. It's not the graphic novel that is the same story as the book, but rather it's a kind of a bit of a prequel story, not a direct prequel, so it doesn't end up where the book sort of starts, but it's set half a year before the book, and sort of gives the setting a bit more of a fleshing out, so to say. VDN's sort of blessing, of course. We're in the early stages of the project. There's going to be a crowdfunding campaign that's coming probably in October, I would say, autumn, and then probably the first big story is going to be delivered towards the end of next year. So that's what you would expect. It's a 50-page long story. So it takes about a year for a graphic artist to finish.
We are from Canary Islands. I'm Eduardo. Edward T. Riker is my name as writer. We are adapting the H.P. Lovecraft work to the choose your own adventure style. If you take the same choices, the main characters, you will reach the regular end. But if you take your own choices, you will finish horrible ways. Maybe they are devoured or crazy in a mental institution. The fourth one was lost in the airport. So it's really, really fun. Thank you, airport, for that.
So are these books very scary? Do you aim to scare people?
If you want to scare people, read this one. The Dreams at the Witch House is a classic Gothic horror history with a witch that comes from these walls to see you while you are sleeping, to lick your toe fingers. It's really, really nice. It's very scary.
Speaking of witches, check out this crazy character. Hello, sir. So, what are you up to today?
I'm a lady.
Are you?
Yes. My name is Baba Yaga.
Ah, yes, of course.
Yes, the famous Russian witch. Eater of children and curser of souls.
Ooh, that's a bit nasty, isn't it?
Oh, yes, but I have a day off on a Saturday every other month.
So how many souls do you intend to consume during the day today?
Oh, just 5 will be fine.
Just your standard
Yes,
5?
yes, 5 meals a day.
So
yes.
That's your 5 a day, is
5
it?
a day.
5 a day. Turned out Baba Yaga was a promo witch for writer Oliver MacNeil, whose Story Masters Tales is a hybrid of role-playing, board game and choose-your-own-adventure book.
It's super quick to play.
Yes.
But it's got depth to it as well, and it will get people kind of role-playing even if they're not role players. So if you've got family members you're trying to introduce to it, or people who don't normally they play traditional board games but they don't like role-playing games, this is still accessible for them.
Right, let's find out how much the auction masters Jackson and Livingstone flogged White Dwarf number 1 for.
Let's start the bidding off at £30. Anybody with £30 for that? £30 I've got. 35? 35. 35 I've got. Anybody bid 40? Yeah. 40 I've got. 40, 45 anywhere? 45? 45, 50. Anybody give me 55? 55. 60? 60, 65, 65, 70, 75, 70, 80, 85, 90, 90, getting close, 90, 95, £100. Okay, let's take stock there, £100. £100. 110. 110 at the back. 120 anywhere? 120, I've got 110. 120. 120, any advance on that? 130? 130 anywhere? 130. 140. Yeah, 140. Okay, 140, 150. No, I was thinking about it, £150 anywhere. £150. Yes, I've got £150. Okay. Any advance on 150? 160? 160? 150 going once. 150 going... Oh, that's 160, isn't it? 160. Any advance on 160? 170 anywhere? Yeah, okay. 170's come back in. 170. 180 anywhere? 180, so 170 going once, 170 going twice, 180 we've got 190, 190, you know it's going to get up to 200. 190, no, 200, not yet, 200, 200, any advance on 200, 220. 220 anywhere, 220, 210. 210, okay, 210. Any advance, 220 anywhere. 220, 220. 230 anywhere. 230 anywhere. 220 going once, 220 going twice. 230. 230. Any advance on 230? 240. Anybody got 240? 240, 230 going once. 230 going twice. Sold for 230.
I'll bring my 10 copies next time.
£230. That is a really amazing price at a really amazing event. I had a fantastic time and I will definitely be back for the next one. I really hope you've enjoyed this report. If you'd like to be thanked by name in all future videos on this channel, then check out my Patreon, where you can choose to support this channel with an ongoing monthly pledge and receive benefits as a result. I'd really appreciate it. Now let me leave you with the cover of my new novel, 2 other videos you might want to check out, and my face, which you can click on to subscribe. Until next time, embrace your obsession.